The tray slipped from her hands before she even realized her fingers had gone numb. Porcelain shattered across the polished lobby floor. The sound cracked sharp enough to turn heads. Tea spread in a thin amber pool that reflected the towering glass ceiling above. Mina froze.
It's all right.
A small hand tugged at the
I'm
hem
right
of her
here with you.
uniform. She looked down.
They will be here
A little
very
boy
soon.
stood there, staring up at her with eyes too quiet for someone so young. His grip was gentle but urgent, like he was afraid she might disappear if he loosened his fingers. "Can I hug you, miss?" he whispered. The world did not stop. People still walked past. Phones still rang at the reception desk. But the space around them tightened into something fragile and strange. She should have stepped back. Employees were not supposed to interact with guests' children. She could already feel the manager's glare burning from across the lobby. But the boy's voice had trembled. Not loud enough for anyone else to notice. Only for her. She knelt. "Yes," she said softly. He hugged her like he had been holding his breath for days. His arms wrapped around her neck, small but firm. His cheek pressed against her shoulder. His body relaxed in a way that felt less like comfort and more like surrender. Mina felt it immediately, that silent, aching kind of loneliness children rarely show in public. Her hand rose slowly, resting on his back. She did not squeeze. She simply stayed. Footsteps rushed toward them. Security. "Sir, please, young master, you cannot." The boy did not let go. "Just a moment," he murmured against her shoulder. Mina stiffened. "Young master?" The lobby doors opened. A black luxury car stopped directly at the entrance. The driver stepped out first. Then another man. Tall. Impeccably dressed. Presence alone shifted the air pressure of the room. He walked in without hurry. People moved aside instinctively. His gaze landed on the child, then on her. Cold was not the right word. Cold implied distance. His eyes were precise. Controlled. Assessing. The boy finally released her and turned. "Father." Mina's pulse dropped into her stomach. The man approached. No raised voice. No visible anger. Only quiet authority that made even the security guard straighten. "You left your escort," he said to the child. "I wanted to say hello." His gaze moved to Mina again. "Did you approach him?" Her throat tightened. "No, sir." "He came to me." Silence. Not the awkward kind. The heavy kind that demands truth without force. The boy reached for the man's hand but kept glancing back at her. "Goodbye, miss," he said. She bowed slightly. She crouched so they were eye level. Sometimes people are just waiting for permission to be kind. His expression changed, not brighter, but softer. Footsteps approached from behind her. She turned. Kang Min-jae stood several meters away, speaking quietly with an assistant. His attention shifted mid-sentence. Directly to her. June did not move. He simply said, "Father, this is her." Silence settled again. Min-jae dismissed his assistant with a subtle gesture. He walked closer, each step measured. "You met before," he said. "Yes, sir. My son approaches few people." She did not know how to respond to that without sounding defensive. So she said nothing. He crouched beside June, adjusting the child's collar with careful precision. "Did you disturb her work?" June shook his head. "She talks gently." Min-jae's hand paused for a fraction of a second. Then he stood. "To my office," he said to Mina. Not loud. Not harsh. Not optional. His office overlooked the entire city. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Minimal furnishings. No personal items visible. It felt less like a workspace and more like a controlled environment where nothing unnecessary existed. "Why did you comfort him?" he asked. Because he asked. Children ask many things. She held his gaze, though her heartbeat pounded hard enough to make her vision pulse. He asked for a hug, not a favor. He studied her in silence. "You expect compensation?" "No." "Recognition?" "No." "Access?" Her brow furrowed slightly. "To what?" "To influence," he said evenly. The question unsettled her more than accusation would have. "I expect nothing." He stepped closer. People often raised their voices when they wanted control. He lowered his. "You work in a building where people manufacture opportunity from coincidence." "I understand." "Then understand this as well." His tone remained calm. My son's emotional attachment is not a resource. Her fingers tightened at her sides. I never treated him that way. He watched her for several seconds. Not searching for guilt. Searching for inconsistency. He did not find any. You may return to work. She bowed slightly and turned to leave. Mississippi. She paused. He requested to see you again. She did not turn back. If he approaches me, I will not ignore him. A long pause followed. Very well, he said quietly. The next encounter was not planned. June was sitting alone in a waiting lounge, feet not touching the floor, hands folded in his lap. He looked composed. Too composed. She approached slowly. Are you waiting for someone? For father. Is he late? No. He is always exactly on time. She sat beside him anyway. What do you like to do when you're not waiting? She asked. He thought about it seriously. I observe. That sounds important. It helps me understand people. And what have you learned? He glanced at her. Most people smile without warmth. She let out a small breath. You're very observant. Are you warm? The question landed without warning. She did not answer immediately. I try to be, she said finally. He nodded as if confirming a hypothesis. May I sit here until father comes? You're already sitting. He allowed a tiny smile. Minutes later, Min-jae entered the lounge. His gaze moved from his son to her and stayed there. Were you unattended? He asked June. I chose to sit. His eyes returned to Mina. You were not instructed to supervise him. I wasn't, she replied calmly. He wasn't alone. Silence stretched. Not hostile. Measuring. June stood and reached for his father's hand. But his other hand moved, hesitated, then lightly touched Mina's sleeve. Goodbye. She nodded. Goodbye, June. He followed his father out. But he looked back twice. Min-jae noticed. Days turned into a pattern neither adult acknowledged aloud. June appeared. They spoke. Sometimes briefly. Sometimes longer. Always within visible distance of security. He asked unusual questions. Do you ever feel invisible? Yes. Does it hurt? Sometimes. What helps? Someone noticing. He seemed to store each answer carefully. One afternoon, the elevator malfunctioned. Lights flickered. The enclosed space filled with the sound of strained cables. June's breathing changed instantly. Mina noticed before anyone else. It's okay, she said softly. We're not in danger. He shook his head, small hands trembling. I don't like closed spaces. She crouched in front of him, keeping her voice steady. Look at me. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. His focus locked onto her face. By the time the elevator resumed movement, his breathing had steadied. When the doors opened, Min-jae was waiting. He took in the scene instantly. His son's calm. Her position. The absence of panic. What happened? Delay, Mina said simply. June held his father's hand, but looked up at him. She stayed. Something changed in Min-jae's expression then, not visible to anyone who did not look closely. Not warmth. Recognition. Thank you, he said. It was the first time he had addressed her without interrogation. That evening, Mina received an official message requesting her presence again. His office felt even quieter than before. You calm him, he said without preamble. I speak gently. That is insufficient explanation. She considered her answer carefully. He listens because he wants to be understood, not managed. Min-jae's gaze sharpened slightly. You believe others manage him. I believe many people try to fix what they do not first understand. Silence settled between them. You are not trained in child psychology. No. You are not a caregiver. No. Yet he seeks you. She did not respond. He stepped closer to the window, looking out over the city. Attachment creates vulnerability, he said quietly. Isolation does too, she replied before she could stop herself. The room went very still. He turned. Their eyes met. For the first time, she saw something beneath control. Not anger. Conflict. You speak boldly for an employee, he said. She lowered her gaze slightly. You asked. A long pause passed. My son will attend scheduled meetings within this building over the coming weeks, he said finally. You may interact with him when appropriate. Not permission. Not gratitude. Allowance. She nodded. Thank you, sir. As she reached the door, his voice stopped her again. Miss Mina. She turned. Why did you not ask for his surname? She held his gaze calmly. He is a child before he is a name. Another pause. Return to work. The change in June was subtle but undeniable. He spoke more. Asked more. Smiled occasionally when he thought no one noticed. One afternoon, he approached her with unusual urgency. Miss Mina. Yes. He hesitated, searching for words. Do people stay if they are not required to? She crouched beside him. Sometimes they choose to. He nodded slowly. Then he asked again, voice barely audible. May I hug you? She opened her arms. Across the corridor, Kang Min-jae stood watching. This time he did not interrupt. He did not call his son away. He simply observed, long, silent, and unreadable, as the child he protected from everything leaned into a kindness he could not command. And something within him, long disciplined into stillness, shifted. It lasted only a few seconds, but its impact lingered long after June stepped back. Mina rose slowly, aware of the gaze fixed on them. Kang Min-jae stood at the far end of the corridor, hands clasped behind his back, posture perfectly composed. Yet there was something different in the way he watched, not interruption, not suspicion. Observation with weight. June followed his father when called, but he looked lighter as he walked away. That night Mina told herself the pattern would fade. Children moved on quickly. Powerful families replaced interactions they disliked. It did not fade. 2 mornings later, she arrived to find a sealed envelope at her workstation. No sender name. Inside was a simple card. Report to Executive Meeting Room B. 10 a.m. No explanation. She entered the room exactly on time. Min-jae stood near the window. June sat at the long table, legs swinging slightly above the floor. You called for me, sir? She asked. I did not, Min-jae replied. June raised his hand politely. I requested her. Mina blinked. Min-jae watched his son for a moment, then turned to her. My son has a scheduled evaluation today. He insisted you be present. That is not necessary, she said carefully. It is not, Min-jae agreed. Yet he persists. June looked between them. I focus better when she is nearby. The honesty of the statement left no room for polite dismissal. Min-jae gestured to a chair at the far end of the room. You may sit. You will not participate. Mina nodded and sat quietly. The evaluation began. Questions. Observations. Behavioral metrics. June answered calmly, but every few minutes his eyes shifted briefly toward Mina, confirming she was still there. He performed flawlessly. When the specialists left, Min-jae remained standing, reviewing documents. June slid off his chair and walked toward Mina. Thank you for staying. You did very well, she said. I was not afraid. I noticed. Min-jae spoke without looking up. Fear is inefficient. June glanced at him. Not when someone helps. Min-jae's pen paused mid-signature. The silence that followed was not empty. It was tense with something unspoken. You may return to work, Min-jae told her. She stood. As she reached the door, June spoke again. Miss Mina. She turned. Will you still be here tomorrow? Yes. He nodded as if confirming a critical fact. Min-jae did not comment. But when she left, she felt his attention follow her until the door closed. Rumors spread quickly in quiet environments. Staff began noticing. The child who spoke to no one spoke to her. The chairman who acknowledged few people acknowledged her existence. Security presence subtly increased around any space she entered when June was nearby. One afternoon, a senior administrator approached her. You should be careful, the woman whispered. Attention from powerful families rarely comes without consequence. Mina smiled politely but did not respond. She was already careful. But she was also unwilling to ignore a child who simply wanted someone to listen. The real shift happened during a storm. Rain hammered the building in relentless sheets. Thunder rolled close enough to rattle the glass panels. Electrical systems flickered once, twice. She heard the disturbance before she saw him. June stood near the central atrium, Rigid, small hands pressed over his ears. The vast open space amplified every echo of thunder. Employees hesitated, uncertain how to intervene without overstepping. Mina walked toward him without urgency. "I don't like loud sounds," he said through clenched breath. She crouched beside him. "Then we'll make them smaller." "How?" "Listen to my voice instead." His focus shifted slowly. "Storms end," she said softly. "They don't stay." He lowered his hands a fraction. Another thunderclap shook the building. His shoulders tensed again, but he did not panic. She held his gaze steadily. "You're safe," he repeated quietly. "Safe." Behind them, Min-jae approached. He had arrived silently, but the change in atmosphere announced him more clearly than footsteps. He observed without interrupting. June reached out blindly, and Mina let him take her hand. His grip tightened during the next thunderclap, then gradually loosened. Minutes passed. When the storm softened, June released her hand and stepped back on his own. Min-jae spoke then. "You anticipated his response." "I responded to it," she corrected gently. He considered that distinction. "You remain composed under pressure," he said. "I remain present." Another long silence. June looked between them. "Father." She makes noise feel far away. Min-jae's gaze did not leave Mina's face. "Return to your escort," he told June. The child obeyed, but lingered for a second before leaving. Now only the two adults remained in the vast atrium. "You create influence without seeking it," Min-jae said quietly. "I create comfort where I can. That is influence." She met his gaze without challenge. Then perhaps influence is not always manipulation. The statement hung in the air between them. "You speak as if power is optional," he said. "I speak as if kindness is," she replied. For a moment, something flickered behind his controlled expression, not irritation, not dismissal. Recognition of a perspective he rarely encountered. "Your work responsibilities will change," he said finally. Her breath caught slightly. "Sir, you will be reassigned to administrative support within this floor." "That is unnecessary." "It is efficient," he corrected. She understood the meaning beneath the word. Controlled proximity. Supervised interaction. "Very well," she said. He inclined his head once and walked away. The reassignment altered more than location. It altered distance. She now worked within the executive level daily. She saw June often, but always within structured boundaries. Conversations remained brief. Observed. Appropriate. Yet emotional gravity grew. One evening, as the building quieted near closing time, June approached her desk carrying a small object. "For you," he said. She accepted it gently. A simple folded paper crane. "You made this?" He nodded. "I learned today." "It's beautiful." He watched her carefully. "Do you like it because it is good or because I made it?" She smiled softly. "Both." He seemed satisfied. Min-jae appeared moments later. June stepped aside, but did not retreat. "My son gives few gifts," Min-jae said. "I will take care of it," she replied. He studied the small paper crane in her hand. "Attachment," he said quietly, "creates expectation." "Expectation is not always burden," she answered. "Explain." "It can also be trust." He did not respond immediately. "Trust requires risk," he said at last. "Yes." "And you accept risk easily." She shook her head slightly. "No. I accept connection despite risk." His eyes narrowed just slightly, as if evaluating the difference. June slipped his hand into his father's. "We should go." Min-jae nodded. But before leaving, he said something unexpected. "Miss Mina, you may accompany us tomorrow afternoon." She blinked. "For what purpose?" "My son requested your presence during a private engagement." "That is not appropriate." "It is approved," he said simply. June looked up at her. Not pleading, just hopeful. She hesitated only a moment. "I will attend," she said quietly. The engagement was not a meeting. It was a quiet visit to a private garden terrace high above the city. No media. No staff beyond security at a distance. June walked slowly between them, holding neither hand at first. Then, after a few minutes, he reached for both. Mina felt the slight tension in Min-jae's posture when their hands connected through the child. But he did not withdraw. June looked content simply walking between them, as if bridging two separate worlds required no effort at all. "Father," he said after a while, "do people choose who feels safe?" "Yes," Min-jae replied. "Then safety is not random." "No." June nodded thoughtfully, then released their hands and walked ahead a few steps. Min-jae spoke quietly. "You understand the position you are placed in." "I understand the responsibility," she replied. "You could request advantage from this proximity." "I will not." "You could influence decisions indirectly." "I will not." "You could become necessary." She paused before answering. "That is not something one person decides." He watched her profile for several seconds. "My son sleeps more easily on days he sees you," he said. She did not know how to respond to that truth without stepping into territory neither of them had defined. "I am glad he rests," she said softly. The wind shifted across the terrace. The city stretched endlessly below them. "Miss Mina," he said after a long silence, voice lower than before, "what do you seek in life?" She considered the question seriously. "Stability," she said. "And the chance to remain kind without regret." He absorbed that answer as if measuring its weight against everything he knew about ambition, power, and survival. "Those goals are uncommon," he said. "Perhaps they are simply quiet." June returned, slipping his small hand into hers without hesitation. Min-jae watched that simple act with an expression that revealed nothing and everything. If this story is pulling you in, stay with it. The next part is where trust begins to clash with control, and the cost of emotional attachment becomes impossible to ignore. The change did not announce itself loudly. It appeared in small disruptions to routine. A meeting rescheduled because June refused to enter a room until Mina arrived. A quiet request from Min-jae's assistant asking if she could remain on the executive floor beyond her assigned hours. A new security protocol that did not restrict her access, only tracked it. Control adapting to something it could not eliminate. One afternoon, Mina noticed June sitting alone in a conference room long after everyone else had left. Papers were spread across the table untouched. His posture was rigid, eyes fixed on nothing. She stepped inside quietly. "Did your meeting finish?" He nodded without moving. "Then why are you still here?" "I was told to remain until father returns." "And you chose to stay exactly as instructed?" "Yes." She pulled out a chair across from him and sat. He spoke without looking at her. "Miss Mina, if someone important leaves often, is it because they don't want to stay?" She understood the question behind the words. "Sometimes people leave because they believe their presence is not what someone needs," she said gently. He finally looked at her. "But what if they're wrong? Then someone must help them see differently." He absorbed that answer slowly. The door opened. Min-jae entered. His gaze moved from the empty room to Mina seated across from his son. "You remained," he said to June. "Yes. And you were not instructed to wait with him," he said to Mina. "No." Silence stretched. June spoke first. "I asked a question." Min-jae's attention sharpened slightly. "And she answered." "Yes." Min-jae walked to the table and gathered the documents with precise movements. "What was the question?" June hesitated, then answered honestly. "Why important people leave." Min-jae's hands paused over the papers. "And what answer satisfied you?" he asked. June looked at Mina briefly before replying. "That they may not understand what is needed." The room grew still. Min-jae finished arranging the documents and turned toward Mina. "You interpret absence generously." "I interpret emotion carefully," she replied. His gaze held hers for several seconds. Not confrontational. Searching. "Return home," he told June. The child obeyed, but not before looking between them once more. When the door closed, only the quiet hum of the building remained. "You encourage expectation," Min-jae said. "I encourage honesty." "Honesty produces attachment. So does silence." He exhaled slowly, not in frustration but in measured consideration. "You believe connection is always beneficial. I believe isolation is rarely protective." He stepped closer, stopping at a distance that was neither formal nor familiar. "You assume my decisions are motivated by fear." "I assume they are motivated by care expressed cautiously." Something shifted in his expression, the faintest fracture in composure. "You speak as if you understand restraint." I understand loss, she said softly. He did not ask what she meant. But he did not look away. After a long pause, he said, "My son requested your presence tomorrow evening." For what purpose? A private dinner. That is not appropriate, she said immediately. It is supervised, he replied. That does not change perception. His voice lowered slightly. Perception does not concern me. Impact does. She held his gaze. And what impact do you expect? He did not answer immediately. That he learned stability can exist without condition. The sincerity in his tone surprised her. She inclined her head slightly. Then I will attend. The dinner took place in a quiet private suite overlooking the city lights. No media. No guests. Only 3 settings at the table. June sat between them, unusually quiet at first. He observed everything carefully, how they spoke, how they paused, how they listened. Miss Mina, he said suddenly, do adults practice conversation? She smiled. Sometimes we should. He nodded thoughtfully. During the meal, Min-jae spoke little. But he watched. He observed the way June relaxed when Mina responded gently. The way the child spoke more freely than he ever did in formal environments. Halfway through dinner, June placed his fork down. Father. Yes. Is protection the same as distance? The question landed heavily in the quiet room. Min-jae did not answer immediately. No, he said at last. Then why do they often appear together? Mina remained silent. The conversation belonged to them. Min-jae folded his hands on the table. Because distance is a form of protection when harm is uncertain. June considered that. And when harm is not present? Then distance becomes unnecessary. The child nodded slowly, as if filing away a rule he would test later. After dessert, June excused himself briefly, leaving the 2 adults alone. Silence settled, but it was not uncomfortable. It was dense with awareness. You navigate him carefully, Min-jae said. I respond honestly. You do not attempt to replace absence. I do not believe people are replaceable. His eyes lingered on her face. You avoid advantage even when offered. I avoid debt I cannot repay. He stepped toward the window, city lights reflecting faintly in his gaze. You believe kindness is sustainable. I believe it must be. He turned back toward her. And if kindness creates vulnerability you cannot manage? She met his gaze steadily. Then I will accept the cost of choosing it. For a moment, something unguarded moved behind his composure, not weakness, but recognition of a principle he had long abandoned. June returned, slipping naturally between them again. May I ask something? He said. Yes, they both answered. He looked at Mina first. If someone important might leave, should we hold them closer or let them choose freely? She spoke carefully. You let them choose. And you remain sincere. He nodded, then looked at his father. Do you agree? Min-jae held his son's gaze. Yes, he said quietly. June seemed satisfied. When the evening ended, Min-jae walked Mina to the exit himself. Security remained distant, respectful. You altered his emotional equilibrium, he said. I listened. You remained when departure would have been simpler. Sometimes presence is the simplest choice. He studied her expression as if memorizing something he did not intend to admit he valued. Miss Mina, he said after a long pause, voice lower than before, if circumstances required distance, would you accept it without resentment? She understood the question was not hypothetical. I would accept what protects him, she answered. He nodded once. Then we understand each other. But neither of them moved immediately. For a brief moment, the city below them seemed quieter than usual. The next escalation came without warning. A media leak. A photograph taken from an unseen distance, June holding Mina's hand in the garden terrace. Circulated without context. Speculation immediate. Commentary relentless. By morning, internal communications tightened. External inquiries blocked. Security increased. Mina was called to Min-jae's office. He stood behind his desk, posture precise, expression unreadable. You understand the implications, he said. Yes. You did not invite exposure. No. But exposure occurred. Yes. Silence. Public scrutiny does not tolerate ambiguity, he continued. Your presence in my son's life will be interpreted as influence. She nodded slowly. Then distance may be necessary. He watched her closely. You accept that without protest. I accept what protects him. His gaze lingered longer than before. June entered abruptly, escorted but determined. I heard, the child said. This is not your concern, Min-jae replied. It is, June insisted. Because distance was discussed. Min-jae crouched to his level. Public attention creates risk. Risk to whom? To stability. June looked between them, eyes searching. Did she cause harm? No. Then why remove what helps? The simplicity of the question cut through every calculated response. Min-jae remained silent. Mina spoke gently. Sometimes adults must adjust situations so they remain safe for everyone. June's gaze fixed on her. Will you leave? She held his eyes steadily. I will remain kind. Wherever I am. He processed that answer slowly, then stepped forward and hugged her again, not desperate, not fearful. Intentional. Min-jae watched. This time, he did not intervene. When June released her, he turned to his father. Safety should not erase warmth. Min-jae's composure held, but only just. After June was escorted out, silence filled the office. You see the consequence, he said quietly. Yes. You may be reassigned away from this floor. She nodded. And you do not resist. I do not belong in his life by right, she said softly. Only by circumstance. He studied her for a long moment. Circumstance, he repeated. Then, in a voice more restrained than ever, he said, return tomorrow. Final decision pending. That night, Mina placed the paper crane June had given her beside her window. She did not know what the next day would bring. But she knew one thing clearly. Kindness had already changed something irreversible. Not in power. In people. If this moment hit you emotionally, you're exactly where the story deepens. The next part is where choice replaces circumstance, and someone who never asked for connection must decide whether to protect it or surrender it. Stay with the story. And if you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps stories like this alive.